Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. A split screen effect. On the left, a map of the U.S. before 1803, and on the right, a map after the Louisiana Purchase, dramatically expanding westward. The borders glow as the two maps merge into one. In 1803, the United States doubled in size overnight, a staggering 828,000 square miles of land, acquired for just $15 million. But what if I told you this historic deal almost never happened? Visual, a slow zoom in on an old painting of Thomas Jefferson, his expression thoughtful as he considers an uncertain future for the young nation. Cut to Napoleon Bonaparte, standing over a map of North America, deep in contemplation. This is the story of how a bold American vision, a desperate French ruler, and a high-stakes diplomatic gamble forever changed the fate of the United States. A deal that was never meant to be, yet became the greatest land acquisition in history. A montage of key historical moments. Jefferson drafting a secret letter to his diplomats. American envoys James Monroe and Robert Livingston in Paris. Napoleon's troops struggling in the Caribbean, and a quill signing the Louisiana Purchase Treaty. How did a young, relatively weak nation pull off such a monumental deal? Why was Napoleon suddenly willing to part with a vast empire? And what were the hidden consequences of this transaction? A final dramatic sequence. Faded newspaper headlines announcing the purchase, images of explorers like Lewis and Clark, setting off into the unknown, and a glimpse of the Native American lands that would soon come under U.S. control. Stay with us as we uncover the untold twists, the secret negotiations, and the legacy of America's greatest land deal, the Louisiana Purchase. A sweeping aerial shot of the vast Louisiana Territory, rolling plains, mighty rivers, and dense forests. The Mississippi River snakes through the landscape, illustrating the scale of the land acquired. The Louisiana Purchase was more than just a land deal. It was a turning point in American history. Overnight, the United States doubled in size, securing vast new territories that would shape the nation's destiny. But how did this incredible deal come to be? And why was it so controversial? A map of the United States before 1803, with the Louisiana Territory outlined in a different color. As the narrative unfolds, the territory is filled in, showing the new, expanded United States. In 1803, President Thomas Jefferson's administration negotiated the purchase of 828,000 square miles of land from France for just $15 million, roughly 4 cents per acre. It was an acquisition so massive that it stretched from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains and from the Gulf of Mexico to Canada. But beyond its sheer size, why was this land so valuable? A close-up of a historical map of the Mississippi River, followed by a slow zoom into the bustling port of New Orleans in the early 1800s. Dock workers load cargo onto ships, merchants negotiate deals, and farmers bring their goods to market. The key to the Louisiana Territory wasn't just land, it was control. The Mississippi River was the lifeblood of trade for American settlers in the West, and at the heart of it all was New Orleans, the gateway to the Gulf of Mexico and global commerce. Without access to these critical waterways, the economic future of the young United States was at risk. A dramatic cut to President Thomas Jefferson in his study, pen in hand, reviewing maps and letters from American diplomats in Paris. Jefferson knew securing New Orleans was crucial, but what he didn't expect was that France would offer not just the port, but all of Louisiana. Why was Napoleon Bonaparte, ruler of one of the most powerful empires in the world, suddenly willing to sell such a vast territory? And why did many in America consider the purchase controversial? A quick montage: Napoleon's armies struggling in the Caribbean, American diplomats arriving in France, political debates erupting in Congress over whether the U.S. even had the constitutional authority to make such a purchase. The Louisiana Purchase wasn't just a stroke of luck. It was the result of war, revolution, and high-stakes diplomacy. In this video, we'll uncover the twists and turns behind the greatest real estate deal in history. How did it happen? Who opposed it? And what were the consequences for the United States, France, and the people who already lived on this land? Slow fade to the Louisiana Territory's map, with an animation showing the U.S. expanding westward over time, setting the stage for the deep dive into history. Let's begin with the world in 1803, where the fate of the Louisiana Territory was still uncertain. A vintage-style map of the United States in the early 1800s, with only 17 states along the eastern seaboard. The Mississippi River and the Louisiana Territory remain highlighted in a different color. At the dawn of the 19th century, the United States was still in its infancy. It had won its independence from Britain just a few decades earlier, but its future was far from secure. The country stretched only as far west as the Mississippi River, and beyond that lay a vast, uncharted wilderness controlled by European powers. For American farmers and traders, one location was more important than any other: New Orleans. Bustling 19th century depiction of the port of New Orleans. Ships loaded with barrels, sacks of grain, and cotton bales are docked along the riverbanks. Merchants and traders negotiate deals, while slaves and laborers unload goods. By 1800, nearly half of all American goods, especially grain, tobacco, and cotton, traveled down the Mississippi River to be shipped through New Orleans. The port was the economic heart of the western frontier, and for settlers in states like Kentucky and Tennessee, access to this vital trade route was a matter of survival. But there was one major problem: New Orleans wasn't under American control. Sequence of maps highlighting Louisiana's shifting ownership, first controlled by France, then ceded to Spain in 1762, before secretly being returned to France in 1800. At the time, Louisiana wasn't even French, it was Spanish. Since the 1760s, Spain had controlled the Louisiana Territory, allowing American traders to use New Orleans through a special agreement. But in 1800, everything changed. Spain secretly transferred Louisiana back to France under Napoleon Bonaparte, one of the most ambitious leaders in European history. A dramatic cut to Napoleon in full military regalia, standing before a map of his expanding empire, surrounded by generals. Napoleon had grand visions for a new French empire in the Americas. He wanted Louisiana to be the centerpiece of a vast colonial network stretching from the Caribbean to the Mississippi Valley. For President Thomas Jefferson, this was a nightmare scenario. Thomas Jefferson in the White House, looking over a letter from a diplomat warning about French control of New Orleans. Jefferson feared that if Napoleon controlled New Orleans, he could choke off American trade and cripple the economy of the western frontier. Even worse, it could lead to war. The young United States had no interest in fighting another European superpower, especially not France, one of the world's most formidable military forces. But Jefferson knew he had to act fast. If Napoleon closed off the Mississippi, America's entire future could be at risk. A slow zoom-in on a letter written by Jefferson, emphasizing key phrases like, "We must have New Orleans," and "the day that France takes possession of New Orleans, we must marry ourselves to the British fleet and nation." Jefferson was so concerned that he even considered forming an alliance with Britain, America's former enemy, to counter French expansion. But before taking drastic measures, he first decided to try diplomacy. His plan? Send envoys to France to negotiate a deal and, if possible, buy New Orleans outright. What he didn't realize was that Napoleon was facing problems of his own, problems that would change the course of history. A dramatic shot of Napoleon Bonaparte standing over a large map, his hands resting on the Louisiana Territory, with the Caribbean islands also visible. Soldiers and advisors stand nearby, awaiting his orders. By the year 1800, Napoleon Bonaparte had risen to power as the ruler of France. His ambitions stretched beyond Europe. He wanted to rebuild France's colonial empire in the Americas, with Louisiana at its heart. But his dreams of global dominance were about to collide with an unexpected force: revolution. Napoleon's vision: a new French empire in the Americas. Visual: a 3D animation of a map highlighting French territories, including Louisiana, Saint-Domingue, modern-day Haiti, and Guadeloupe. Napoleon's plan was bold. He wanted to use the vast Louisiana Territory as the breadbasket of a new French empire. With rich farmland and an extensive river system, Louisiana could supply food and resources to France's Caribbean colonies, particularly Saint-Domingue, the most profitable sugar-producing colony in the world. But controlling Louisiana wasn't just about agriculture. It was about power. If France dominated the Mississippi River, it could challenge both Britain and the United States in North America. French troops preparing to set sail for the Americas, led by General Charles Leclerc, Napoleon's brother-in-law. In 1801, Napoleon sent a powerful military force to reclaim Saint-Domingue from a massive slave uprising that had erupted a decade earlier. He was determined to crush the rebellion and restore French control. But what he didn't anticipate was that the Haitian Revolution would turn into one of the greatest defeats in French history. The Haitian Revolution, France's Caribbean disaster. Visual: a montage of fierce battles between French soldiers and Haitian revolutionaries, led by Toussaint Louverture and Jean-Jacques Dessalines. The Haitian Revolution was unlike anything the world had seen before. Former slaves, led by Toussaint Louverture and later Jean-Jacques Dessalines, fought against the French army with a mix of guerrilla warfare and all-out battle tactics. France sent tens of thousands of troops, but they were decimated, not just by the skilled Haitian forces, but by an invisible enemy, yellow fever. French soldiers falling ill, bodies being carried away, and a desperate General Leclerc writing letters back to Napoleon. Yellow fever wiped out thousands of French soldiers, including General Leclerc himself. By 1803, the French had lost over 50,000 men, and Napoleon was forced to abandon his dream of restoring the Caribbean Empire. Haiti would soon declare independence, becoming the first black-led republic in the world and the second independent nation in the Western Hemisphere after the United States. Haitian revolutionaries raising their flag in victory, a stark contrast to Napoleon looking frustrated in France. Napoleon's financial crisis and the need for quick cash. Visual: Napoleon pacing in a palace, speaking urgently with advisors while maps of Europe show growing war fronts against Britain, Austria, and Russia. The loss of Saint-Domingue was more than just a military defeat. It was an economic disaster. Without the sugar wealth of the Caribbean, Louisiana became a liability, rather than an asset. At the same time, Napoleon was preparing for war in Europe, facing mounting opposition from Britain, Austria, and Russia. He needed money, and he needed it fast. A financial ledger with massive war expenses, followed by a zoom-in on Napoleon, deep in thought. Napoleon now faced a difficult choice: hold on to Louisiana and risk a war with the United States, or sell it and fund his military campaigns in Europe. In a sudden and unexpected move, he made a decision that would change the course of history. He would sell the entire Louisiana Territory, not just New Orleans, but all 828,000 square miles of it. Napoleon's decision to sell Louisiana. Napoleon, turning to his advisors and declaring, "We must sell Louisiana." Napoleon saw an opportunity. If he sold Louisiana, he could achieve two things at once: secure immediate funds for his European wars and strengthen the United States as a counterbalance to Britain. He famously declared, "I have given England a rival who, sooner or later, will humble her pride." A map of Europe, showing Napoleon's growing empire with an overlay of British warships surrounding French-controlled territories. With Britain dominating the seas, Napoleon knew he couldn't defend Louisiana from an American invasion if war broke out. Rather than lose the territory in battle, he chose to sell it on his own terms. But the Americans had no idea that Napoleon was suddenly willing to let go of the land. As far as President Jefferson knew, he was still negotiating just for New Orleans. A transition to American diplomats in France, unaware of the shocking offer they were about to receive. And that's when history took an unexpected turn. When American envoys arrived in Paris, they were met with an astonishing proposal: not just New Orleans, but the entire Louisiana Territory, for a price of just $15 million. The question was, would Jefferson take the deal? A map highlighting New Orleans and the Mississippi River, with arrows pointing toward France, symbolizing American envoys traveling overseas. President Thomas Jefferson had one goal in 1803: secure access to New Orleans and the Mississippi River. The river was the economic lifeline of the young United States, and if a foreign power controlled it, American farmers and merchants could be crippled. But Jefferson never expected that negotiations would turn into the deal of a lifetime, one that would double the size of the nation overnight. America's diplomatic mission: James Monroe and Robert Livingston. Visual: a historical reenactment of President Jefferson writing instructions to his envoys, James Monroe and Robert Livingston. Jefferson feared that if France controlled New Orleans, it could strangle American commerce. He authorized diplomats Robert Livingston and James Monroe to negotiate the purchase of the city and the surrounding territory. The U.S. was prepared to pay up to $10 million for it. What happened? Next stunned them. Monroe and Livingston arriving in Paris, meeting with Napoleon's ministers, expecting a tough negotiation over just New Orleans. Napoleon's shocking offer: all of Louisiana, a dimly lit meeting room in Paris with Napoleon's advisors speaking in hushed tones. Suddenly, one of them leans forward and delivers a shocking proposal. When Monroe and Livingston sat down for negotiations, they expected a fight over New Orleans. Instead, Napoleon's ministers made an offer that seemed too good to be true. France was willing to sell the entire Louisiana Territory, over 828,000 square miles of land, for just $15 million. That's less than 3 cents per acre. A map of, the Louisiana Territory, glowing as its vastness is revealed, stretching from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains. Imagine being in that room, thinking you were negotiating for a single city, only to be handed an empire. Monroe and Livingston were stunned. The offer was so unexpected that they didn't even have permission from Jefferson to make such a deal. But they knew this was an opportunity that might never come again. Why was Napoleon so desperate to sell? Napoleon, standing over a map of Europe, with armies moving across the continent and British warships patrolling the Atlantic. For Napoleon, selling Louisiana wasn't just about money, it was about strategy. He was preparing for war in Europe against Britain, Austria, and Russia. He needed fast cash to fund his armies, and he saw Louisiana as expendable. The land was vast and difficult to defend, and after losing Saint-Domingue in the Haitian Revolution, his dreams of a French-American empire were over. Napoleon speaking to his advisors, saying his famous words, "I have given England a rival who sooner or later will humble her pride." Napoleon believed that by selling Louisiana to the United States, he was strengthening a future rival, to Britain, shifting the balance of power in the New World. The rushed deal, a race against time. Monroe and Livingston hurriedly drafting the terms of the purchase, writing letters back to Jefferson in Washington. The Americans knew they had to act fast. Napoleon's offer wouldn't last forever. If Britain declared war on France, and it soon would, Louisiana might be seized by the British instead. They had to secure the deal before Napoleon changed his mind, or circumstances shifted. A parchment, showing the official treaty being signed on April 30th, 1803, with the signatures of American and French officials. On April 30th, 1803, the Louisiana Purchase Treaty was signed, for just $15 million, an amount that today would barely buy a few city blocks in Manhattan. The United States doubled in size overnight. But there was one problem. Jefferson hadn't authorized such a massive purchase. Would Congress approve it? And was it even constitutional? A transition to the U.S. Capitol, with politicians arguing over the deal, leading into the next chapter. The Louisiana Purchase debate. A split screen of President Jefferson at his desk, looking at the Louisiana Purchase Treaty, while Federalist politicians in Congress argue heatedly. While Napoleon had made his decision back in America, President Thomas Jefferson faced a major dilemma. Was this deal even legal? The U.S. Constitution did not explicitly grant the president the power to buy foreign land. Jefferson, a strict believer in limited government, now found himself in a paradox. To secure the greatest land deal in history, he might have to violate his own principles. Jefferson's constitutional dilemma. A parchment of the U.S. Constitution, zooming in on the sections dealing with presidential powers. Nowhere in the Constitution did it say that the president could buy new territory. Jefferson initially believed that an amendment might be needed to make the purchase legal, but time was running out. Napoleon's offer wouldn't stay on the table forever, and Jefferson had to decide, stick to his principles, or seize this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Jefferson, pacing in his study, discussing the issue with his advisors, including Secretary of State James Madison. Ultimately, Jefferson justified the purchase under the president's treaty-making powers. It was a stretch, but it worked. Yet not everyone in America was thrilled about this sudden expansion. Federalist opposition, too much land, too many problems. A congressional chamber filled with angry Federalists, shaking their heads as they discussed the purchase. The Louisiana Purchase was not universally celebrated. Jefferson's political opponents, the Federalists, were deeply skeptical. Some believed the purchase was unconstitutional. Others feared the sheer size of Louisiana would make it impossible to govern properly. And some had an even more cynical concern. New Western territories meant more farming communities, potentially expanding the power of Jefferson's Democratic-Republican Party. A Federalist politician delivering a speech warning that Louisiana was a wilderness of savages and that it would weaken the East's influence in government. One Federalist senator even called Louisiana a worthless desert, ironically, the same land that would later become America's heartland. Impact on Native American lands, the beginning of westward expansion. A group of Native American leaders looking at maps of their ancestral lands, now under American control. One of the most overlooked consequences of the Louisiana Purchase was its impact on Native American nations. For centuries, many tribes had lived on these lands, hunting, farming, and trading. But now, with American control expanding westward, their way of life would never be the same. Visual. A montage of future events, Lewis and Clark exploring, settlers moving west, and Native Americans being displaced. While Jefferson spoke about treating Native nations fairly, the purchase opened the floodgates for westward expansion, setting the stage for future land grabs, broken treaties, and forced removals that would define much of 19th century American history. Congress approves the deal. America doubles in size. Visual. The U.S. Capitol building, with lawmakers gathered to vote on the Louisiana Purchase. Despite the controversy, Congress ultimately approved the Louisiana Purchase in late 1803. America's size had doubled with the stroke of a pen. Overnight, the young nation now stretched from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains. But what lay beyond? No one knew for sure. A dramatic zoom-out of a U.S. map showing the massive Louisiana Territory added with this historic purchase finalized, the next challenge was to explore this vast unknown land. What resources, peoples, and mysteries lay hidden in the heart of North America? To find out, Jefferson would send two men on one of the greatest expeditions in history, Lewis and Clark. A transition to a scene of Meriwether Lewis and William Clark preparing for their journey, setting up the next chapter, the core of discovery. A grand landscape shot of the untamed American frontier, rolling plains, dense forests, and winding rivers, symbolizing the vast potential of the newly acquired land. With the Louisiana Purchase finalized, one major question remained. What exactly had the United States just bought? To find out, President Jefferson launched one of the greatest exploratory missions in history, the Lewis and Clark Expedition. The Lewis and Clark Expedition, mapping the new frontier. A parchment map slowly being drawn, revealing the uncharted western lands. In 1804, Jefferson sent two men, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark, on a daring mission to explore the newly acquired Louisiana Territory. Their orders? Map the land, establish relations with Native American tribes, and search for a possible water route to the Pacific Ocean. A montage of Lewis and Clark's journey, canoes navigating wild rivers, encounters with Native American tribes, and harsh winter camps. The expedition faced extreme challenges, harsh weather, rugged terrain, and unfamiliar wildlife. But they were not alone. Native American tribes like the Mandan, Nez Perce, and Shoshone played a crucial role in their survival. A scene of Sacagawea guiding the expedition. Perhaps the most famous figure of their journey was Sacagawea, a young Shoshone woman who acted as a translator and guide. Thanks to her knowledge of the land, Lewis and Clark successfully reached the Pacific in 1805, forever changing America's understanding of its western frontier. Expansion of American frontier life. Opportunities and conflicts, a time lapse. Animation of settlements spreading across the new western lands. With the Louisiana Territory now under U.S. control, a new chapter in American history began: westward expansion. Farmers, traders, and adventurers saw opportunity in the vast open lands. But expansion came at a cost. A split screen of settlers building homes on one side and Native American tribes watching warily on the other. As American settlers pushed westward, they clashed with Native American nations who had lived on this land for centuries. The Louisiana Purchase set off a chain reaction that would lead to decades of displacement, broken treaties, and conflicts between indigenous peoples and the U.S. government. Long-term effects. How the Louisiana Purchase shaped America securing. U.S. control over the Mississippi River. A cargo boat sailing down the Mississippi, loaded with goods. One of the most immediate benefits of the Louisiana Purchase was securing American control over the Mississippi River and the port of New Orleans. This guaranteed farmers and traders unrestricted access to one of the most vital trade routes in North America. Growth of agriculture and the economy. A slow zoom out from a historical map of the Louisiana Purchase, fading into a modern map of the United States. Imagine a world where the United States never bought Louisiana. Would America have remained a small coastal nation? Would France have regained control of North America? Or worse, would a rival power like Britain or Spain have seized the land instead? A split screen of possible alternate histories: British troops marching through the Mississippi Valley, a French flag flying over New Orleans, and Spanish-controlled western lands. The Louisiana Purchase wasn't just about land. It shaped the very identity of the United States. It set the foundation for westward expansion, economic growth, and the eventual rise of America as a global power. How the Louisiana Purchase still shapes America. Today, defining U.S. borders. A time lapse showing the U.S. growing from its original 13 states to its modern shape. This deal gave the U.S. control of vast territories that later became 15 states, including Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa, Minnesota, and the Dakotas. Without it, the map of America would look very different today. Economic superpower, a transition from 19th century steamboats on the Mississippi River to modern shipping ports and industries. From agriculture to trade, the Louisiana Purchase unlocked America's economic potential. The Mississippi River became the lifeline of the nation, fueling industry, commerce, and transportation for centuries to come. The expansionist mindset. A montage of major expansion events: Lewis and Clark's journey, the Oregon Trail, and settlers pushing westward. This moment planted the seed for manifest destiny, the belief that the U.S. was destined to expand from coast to coast. It led to further land acquisitions, but also conflicts, including the forced removal of Native American tribes. Final reflection. The deal that defined America. A slow fade to Thomas Jefferson's statue, then a transition to modern-day images of the vast landscapes of the Louisiana Territory. In 1803, for just $15 million, America doubled in size. It was a decision that shaped the nation's destiny, bringing prosperity, challenges, and the dream of a united continent. A dramatic aerial shot of the Mississippi River at sunset, symbolizing the lasting impact of the purchase. This wasn't just a land deal. It was the moment that defined America's future. Call to Actio, a closing shot of the Louisiana Purchase map with bold text. What do you think? What if the Louisiana Purchase never happened? How different would America be today? Let us know in the comments below. Buttons appearing for subscribe, like, and watch next. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history, don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold stories of the past. A dynamic closing sequence. Historical portraits of Jefferson and Napoleon fade into a modern map of the U.S., highlighting the Louisiana Purchase territory. Now that you've seen the high-stakes negotiations, the controversies, and the lasting impact, what do you think? Was the Louisiana Purchase the best deal in history, or could things have turned out differently? A question overlay. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your take. Leave a comment. And join the discussion. A seamless transition to a subscribe prompt featuring past video thumbnails. If you love uncovering history's biggest moments, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. More incredible stories are coming your way. The screen fades to black with the text, "Thank you for watching."